So now that we have looked at all the different parts of deconstruction, it's finally time to ask, how does deconstruction end? Let's look at the last part of our definition. A crisis of faith that leads to the questioning of core doctrines and untangling of cultural ideologies, which settles in a faith that was different than before. I've heard many well-intentioned people say that the end goal of deconstruction is reconstruction. And that's true insofar as no one can live entirely free from a belief system. But it's difficult to say that deconstruction has a goal because, like I've said before, there is little control over the process and it isn't something that was chosen. So saying, yes, deconstruct, just make sure you reconstruct a deeper faith than before, is well and good as a hope for someone, but as a statement, it betrays a deep lack of understanding of the deconstruction process. If it's a crisis of faith that one has little control over and it feels like a trap door that dropped them into a dark room, then the most one can do is commit to finding the light, wherever that light may be. And that is what most people do. If you ask people who are deconstructing to define deconstruction themselves, many of them will say something along the lines of, it's a commitment to honesty. It's an honest search for the truth. It's going wherever the truth takes me, no matter where it leads. These are the exact things I said when I was deconstructing. And as a Christian, you might say, well, yes, but Jesus is the truth. He is the light. So of course it will lead people to him. And that was true in my case and for many others. And it should be true for more people. But not all journeys are the same. Everyone doesn't have the same tools, resources, companions, and environments. There is no predetermined outcome for how their journey will end. The destination isn't certainty. It's a light switch. And whatever room they find themselves in when the lights turn on certainly won't be the room they were in before. So what are the potential outcomes of deconstruction? I would like to posit that there are at least 3. If everyone reconstructs something, but not everyone reconstructs the same things, then these could be seen as 3 branches of reconstruction. They are release faith, remix faith, renew faith. You'll notice that these 3 outcomes are after acceptance at the end of the 5 stages of grief. I'll come back to this. But first, let's quickly discuss each outcome. Those who reconstruct by releasing their faith will walk away from Christianity and the church entirely. These are the people that make fundamentalists worry that deconstruction is one stop away from apostasy, because these people have truly apostatized. What's missed is that for people who release their faith, it is often seen by them as their only choice. It's the last resort. They look to the Bible, and they saw violence and misogyny. They looked to the church, and they found hypocrisy and abuse. They looked to prayer, and they found silence. To them, there was no place for them in the family of God. So they left. Not all of these people go on to become atheists. Many of them develop a DIY spirituality with influences of Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, paganism, and more. Their spirituality becomes hyper-individualistic with the goal of self-actualization. We might want to point out many things that they missed on their way out, and that's fair. But it's important that we understand that they typically don't have feet that are quick for the door, but that they wanted to stay and look for ways to do so. It just often isn't the case that they just want to sin, as they are sometimes criticized for doing. Releasing their faith might simultaneously feel like a release from the burden they have carried their whole lives, because in their fundamentalist environment, it was a burden. And they might find themselves going through the 5 stages of grief all over again, mourning the loss of their identity and community they found themselves in for so long. Another group of people might not leave the faith, but they'll remix it and redefine it instead. This is often what people are talking about when they refer to progressive Christianity. Those who redefine their faith will keep the label Christian, but they'll redefine its core tenets so as to no longer be recognizably Christian. They will often downplay or deny a physical resurrection, but speak of a spiritual resurrection. They will deny sin, salvation, and the exclusivity of Christ. They trade their Bible for mysticism and deny the authority of the Bible. So why do they continue to call themselves Christian? Well, there's lots of reasons, but one of the predominant reasons is that for them, to be Western is to be Christian. Since Western culture has been so indelibly shaped by Christianity, we are all Christians by virtue of the Western air that we breathe. So it does no good to try to pretend to not be Christian. Instead, they think we should embrace our heritage but redefined the language and beliefs in ways that ring true in the 21st century. This exact thought process was the subject of a recent season of the Liturgist podcast. Ironically, the Liturgist reported losing many listeners and hearing quite a large amount of pushback for attempting to do this. Many of their listeners had released their faith and developed a DIY faith instead and saw no reason to redeem Christian language. But they at least felt like there was enough demand for this in their audience that they attempted to do it. Beyond the Liturgist, there are other podcasts, books, and speakers who attempt to do this in more authentic ways, Richard Rohr perhaps being the most notable of them. The third group is those who renew their faith. Having gone through the fires of deconstruction, and maybe even passing through parts of the release and redefine stages, these people ultimately renew their faith. They find themselves firmly back inside orthodoxy, committed to the church and confident in Christ.